now people come to Snee every day, and the longest been here since 1971. It's a long time ago. You want to start? You're starting the recording?
3, 2, 1, go!
Good afternoon. My name is Muawia Barazangi. I should start saying Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum in Arabic means peace be on you. Now I'm going to give a brief summary of different period of my life until now. And you're welcome later if you want to ask more questions. I'll be glad to elaborate more. I'm married, and my wife Namet, some of you see her a lot around, and she's also specialist of women studies, and her PhD and her research and her books focusing on Muslim women and the lack of understanding and the problem that Muslim women faces in this world. We have one daughter, Noble, and Noble in San Francisco. She's a specialist, she's MD, PhD type, and specialist with stroke. She's actually now director of stroke research in the largest medical center in San Francisco. And we have one granddaughter, about 5 years old. Now, I born and raised in Damascus. You hear Damascus a lot lately on the news. Most of it is sad. And I attended Damascus University. In physics, my major was physics and minor geology. But I really loved geology more and the field work. In the 1960, that's when the Russian, the Soviet Union, were doing the most comprehensive mapping of Syria. And in the summer, I used to work with the crew, helping different parts of Syria, field work. I graduated from Damascus University, and then I decided, it was routine then that I will get fellowship because my grade were the highest, not only the department, but the whole university. But then politics start to interfere with deciding who continue studies, and I refused to go through it. And I went to the American Friends of the Middle East organization, part of the American Embassy, and they gave me a few name university, and I applied. I read a little bit about Minnesota, and I applied University of Minnesota, not knowing what the heck, where is Minnesota, and what, and because they have a good program of applied geophysics. And I got a letter after a few weeks saying, we'll give you half fellowship, and if you do well, then we'll give you the full. Well, heck, I didn't have time, I didn't have money even to pay for my airline ticket. So we answered back saying, somebody helped me with the English, and I didn't speak English then. And they said that, try to say, look, he's a good student at the university. They agreed. So I traveled to the United States. I arrived to JFK, and I have in my pocket $75. That's it. That's all my money I have. And I stayed with a friend there for a few days, then I continued a flight to Minneapolis. And that was December 13. And that was the shock of my life. There was like a foot of snow and minus 20 Fahrenheit. I arrived at night. Where the heck to go? Anyway, they sent me to the YMCA, and then my advisor showed up. I called my advisor in the morning, Harold Mooney. He's a famous name, who took me gracefully to his home. and he has basement. I stayed for a few days at home until they find me a place in the dormitory. And he gave me gloves, he gave me something for my ears and so on. And I roughed his cat. I didn't know that cat, you don't take them and flip them around. And later, after a year, he told me that he and his wife just about to have a heart attack, seeing what I did to their cat. So started Minnesota and applied geophysics. Harold Mooney is the last graduate student of Bino Gutenberg. Some of you may have heard the name Gutenberg. He's by far the most famous seismologist of all times, maybe. Gutenberg is Jewish, and he ran away from Nazi Germany and went to Caltech, became professor there. And Gutenberg had very few graduate students. Mooney was the last one. He has no time to waste as a graduate student, I guess, doing research and publishing. And he made major discovery. Harold Mooney went to Minnesota, and and I got involved many courses. I took many courses of applied geophysics. And then we did field work for a master's degree in what they call the mid-continent gravity high. Some of you know mid-continent gravity high. It's the largest gravity anomaly in the United States, central United States, run from Dulles in the north to Kansas through Minneapolis area and Iowa. It's an old drift. It's a failed drift. Part of the system, it's 1.1 billion years old and failed and being covered with all the Paleozoic, Mesozoic sediment anyway, and Quaternary. So we were studying it using refraction technique. In those days, you don't have, like now, he goes to Alaska, you have 1,000 equipment, or around here, if you have 7, 8 seismometer, you are lucky. And we put 1 hertz geophone and run refraction survey using explosion. And explosion those days, you don't take permit much, except you tell the sheriff when you go to the county that you're going to use dynamite. And we have with us in truck, university truck, more than at least 2 tons of dynamite in the back of the truck. And we have all the start, you know what they call them, the initiate in a box, say, take care of it away from that. And we just go and by hand, you go and drill like 10 feet, 15 feet, depend. And we hire the guy, just came back from Vietnam, finished his duty in Vietnam. He experienced, put the dynamite and cover it and ran away and wham. And then you get some, and we didn't even tell the farmers in those days. Minnesota, like all the Midwest, 1 mile grid. So every 1 mile will go and do that. So that part of my master's thesis, the result from that. Another interesting thing in Minnesota, aside from the cold, they convinced me I should play with the department team, faculty against student, graduate student, football. I say, and I always played soccer. I say, what the hell is this? The ball is being, somebody sat on it. And, but they say, no, it's easy. All you have to do, we give you the ball and you ran. And so I went with a graduate student. I played like 2 minutes. I wake up in the hospital. and then, apparently, they gave me the ball, and I ran, and I hit one faculty, his nose. I broke his nose, and he hit my ear, and I lost balance, my consciousness. A few years back, about 3, 4 years ago, I saw him in Minneapolis, and he pointed to his nose. He's retired now, but so I never played football in my life again. The same thing, they tried Lamont when I went after to Lamont. They convinced me I can play hockey with them. I always hate snow. I still hate snow in Ithaca after 47 years. I hate ice, but they say it's easy. You don't have to ski. You play goalie. You just sit there. I didn't realize what goalie means. They put backing material around me, you know. And then I played for 10 minutes. I said, no way. Anyway, that's my experience with the sport, American sport. After Minnesota, after finished master, I applied to many universities, including Caltech and MIT, and Columbia, Lamont. That was the beginning of plate tectonics. And I got accepted in all of them, actually. And was the issue where to go. My advisor strongly recommended that I go to Lamont, because that was center for plate tectonic and observations. But Frank Press was the chairman of the department at MIT. Some of you heard Frank Press. He's a well-known seismologist, but he became the science advisor to President Carter, and then became president of National Academy of Sciences. He was here visiting professor many years ago. But he was then chairman of the department at MIT. He came to give a lecture at Minneapolis. I talked to him about being accepted. He was cold. He wasn't really very friendly. So I said, heck with it. I'm not going there. And I'm glad I didn't go to MIT, neither to Caltech. Because Caltech has a reputation. They do nothing but they study one earthquake. They are the master of one earthquake business. They don't have the global view that, well, things change. I'm talking about 50 years ago. And I went to Lamont. I took the bus from Minneapolis to Lamont, and changed many places, and I went to do research, and they said, that was beginning of plate tectonics. There were 20 graduate students in seismology alone. And so it's a large concentration. And geochemist, Bob Kay was a graduate student in geochemistry. And one of the professors said, oh, what you should work on map of seismicity maps, movie. That is, you look at earthquake happening in one region, for example. We started here in South America. Earthquake here may affect here, or earthquake here will trigger earthquake. Look at time distribution of earthquakes. I didn't know any better, so I started. In those days, there was no maps of earthquake like this one, or like the one I distribute around. And but then United States Geological Survey, in those days before that, called Coast and Geodetic Survey, they start locating earthquake, and they have up to then 1967, 65, they have 30,000 earthquakes. But there was the only map of earthquake was Gutenberg and Richter, famous Richter and Gutenberg, and their book was page size. That's it. And it's being reproduced in this report. And so I start looking at earthquake, learning stupid computer, how to use computer. Those days you don't have many computers. You have one computer, all them on one computer. Located in the seismology room, IBM 360. So I learned that and how to use it, and everything, of course, on tapes, the big tape. And all the card, the earthquake or punch card. I don't know if some of you seen them. I have one in my office here. And so you have 30,000 punch cards. I use it the size of 2 tables, boxes. So I have to push it, go to the computer room and feed the stupid boxes to the computer. and then cross your finger. None of them will be chewed while you're feeding them, because you have to repeat the process. Those are days, anyway. So that's the way I was plotting earthquakes. But you need a map to plot earthquakes, and the map, nobody had digital map or I don't know, you do everything by hand. That time, Lee Pachon, maybe some of you heard the name, Lee Pachon, famous Frenchman who was a graduate student in Lamont. He and Jason Morgan in small college called Princeton, he was doing his famous paper, Jason Morgan, on the plates, and Mackenzie Cambridge was also talking about the plate. Mackenzie was visiting in Lamont. He just finished his PhD at young age. He was like 25, 26 years old from Cambridge, PhD, and all of them working on the plate. And Lee Pachon, Lamont doing that. So he was digitizing the Navy charts. Someday I'll bring it here. It's a huge chart, the size of this wall. And digitizing. He said, well, if you help me digitizing, I'll make you use it for your seismicity. So I spent time helping him. And he sure gave me that later. So trying to plot earthquake on a map, Mercator scale, that was another challenge to learn. And one night, and I'm doing stupid movies. That was really naive to think that you can make any discovery there. But one night I decided, what the heck? I have the whole world digitized. Let me plot all my earthquakes at the same time. And I've done it on my own. And to do that, it's not an easy job. It takes a long time in those days. The plotter would go in the pen going around. I have to reserve the whole computer all night. I used to stay often overnight in Lamont because I lived downtown Columbia housing. And it took 17 hours to plot that map, non-stop. So, and I have to watch it because the pen drops sometime, and I have to stop it, so lift the pen. Anyway, you guys have really hard to believe how technology changed, incredible. You can do the whole map in 1 minute maybe now. And I plotted, and I plot them big scale. So in those days in Lamont's second floor, we have large tables. I put them on the table, waiting for people to come. I didn't sleep. And people start coming around between 8 and 9, and everybody will not leave. That's the first time ever anybody's seen the global seismicity on this scale, and the Navy chart beneath it showing approximate topography, mid-ocean ridges. And everybody starts saying, oh, look at this mid-ocean ridge, look at the subduction here, because I plot them different color also. That was a major contribution, and famous Doc Ewing, Morris Ewing, who was director of Lamont, and Jack Oliver was also chairman of seismology. Stop movie business and make a paper with this. And we made a paper out of it. We published 3 large charts in Seismological Society of America, and they made insert. I still have few copies, and I promise to give you one. And details. And that became really major impact to plate tectonics, because everybody, and they used it. All of our Isaacs and Sykes famous paper, Robert, they use it before even publication. They use it, they acknowledge me for it, and they use it. It became bestseller really for that global seismicity. And then I started working with other projects in Lamont, and one major project, we went field work. And field work, in those, as I said, graduate students, really their own initiative. Jack Oliver, you have to give him credit. He said, it would be nice if we have portable seismograph. In those days, you don't think of portable seismograph, unheard of. and the seismographs are heavy and incredible. And they developed one very primitive. He and Jim Broom, some of you may heard the name Jim Broom. Where's Paul? Yeah, you better know Jim Broom. And because he's a famous seismologist, done many things in his life, Jim Broom. And Jack Oliver and other, they went to Nevada with this system, but you need a van, not and they start recording Nevada quakes, and the idea was to go and record, they reproduce figure here in this report. But then the graduate students say, well, hey, we can do better. Peter Ward and Bocher and Nano Sieber and 4 graduate students, they start thinking of how to make one from scratch, and they did it. I should have brought that photo in my office. It's 70 pounds total, have 3 packages you put on your shoulder. Has a geophone, the battery, the clock, and the smoke, you smoke it. And the idea was you use paper, any paper like this, you use. You smoke it in the field and you run 24 hours. That was revolutionary. They built 6 of them. And we took them, they said, okay, now go to California, where else in those days? And I went with Leonardo Sieber. He said, okay, he was 2 years ahead of me, and he came from electrical engineering. He knew a lot about instrumentation. And we have, Lamont has a big 6-wheeler, like a car with a big quarter in the back to sleep, and a huge international and 2 shifted. And we went to California with those 6 instruments. And then discovered, I didn't drive, I have no license. I never drove until then. And Leonardo Sieber discovered his driver license was expired a long time ago. So we drove to California, and he taught me how to drive across California. He said, double shift, how to do it, and that you can do it, don't go over 90. That was the limit.
90 miles.
90 miles an hour. So I didn't go over 90. We stayed around 80. And we crossed the country. And we stopped on the national parks. We did many camping, etc. And then we went to Cape Mendocino. The idea was then just came that this is a special place, Cape Mendocino. Cape Mendocino, northern part of California, right? You see it here, that San Andreas Fault, north of San Francisco under the water, and then comes up here just before Cape Mendocino, and then make the Mendocino fracture zone here. And there were a lot of quakes there. So we went there, and Nano, I should give him credit that he said, we are not going to do what Oliver and Brun and the other did, take instrument and move it around. We're going to sit there and record earthquake. And oh man, the Lamont crowd got mad with us, because in those days, not easy to call. It takes you quite an effort to make a phone call, especially from there. You don't have iPhone. And so when they heard that we made a network, 6 instruments, oh, they cursed us, say, move, you're supposed to move. And now I remember he hanged the phone back and he said 4-letter words I would not repeat. I said, heck with it, we're going to stay here, and we stayed. And we recorded earthquake, and we came up later with a major discovery that there are earthquakes there subcrustal. Until then, nobody believed California has quakes deeper than 20 kilometers. And we come earthquake like 48 kilometers. One of the reviewers said, want to reject the paper. He said they use primitive technique because we use by hand to locate the quakes. And they said that it's not correct. There's no quakes this deep. we went to Berkeley. We talked to Bruce Bolt, who was the director, well-known name, Bruce Bolt, and McKevley. Both of them died. And they say, no way. So, okay. Anyway, the paper published, and Berkeley sent a few people. They did some semi-portable stations, and sure enough, they get deeper even. And that's the idea that, you know, there you have triple junction where the two plates meet, and you have subduction actually of the Gorda plate down there. And we used to go and stayed with the sheriff many evening, have barbecue with them, and that both of us had no driver license. And I have Todd Goat, motor, Lamont, you know, Todd Goat, you know, you go, and Nano convinced me I can cross a river. If I cross a river, shallow river, like a few inches in the summer, they're wide, I avoid driving, you know, so long, and I fell in the river with that. Todd Goat, the motor. Anyway, we gave the motor, as George Haley, as a gift to the rancher. We stayed there. And that made Lamont people mad when we came back. They won't. I worked there, so that was a major discovery. And then we worked the summer after with Mark Spar and Chris Scholz. Some of you may know the name Chris Scholz, famous seismologist in Lamont now, wrote the book on stress and strain and earthquakes. He came there, and we work all the way from Zion National Park, if somebody know about that region here, all the way along the mid seismic zone here. We started here, we went up to a famous place in Montana, National Glacial Park. Yeah, and that was, so every famous, we sat there and we ate a lot of lamb barbecue, and with bear and lions, and anyway, and we went through the Mormon area, and Bob Smith, who was a famous seismologist, then he joined us, and we went through convinced them to let us go into their, you know, they have tunnels inside, east of Salt Lake City. They keep their record, and we went there. They searched for my name, Barazangi, in their record. They didn't find anything. There's no hope. I have Mormon ancestors. Anyway, and our favorite thing was to go Salt Lake City at night. We came, and we didn't have showers, so, you know, at night in the summer they have this, the parks they have rotating, and we get the soap, middle of the night park, and we get soap and go around, take a shower, run around. And we made some interesting observation from that paper. And then I started getting involved with Tonga, Fiji, Samoa project with Brian Isaacs. As you can see, there are a lot of quakes there. Brian, by then, I'm assuming you would invite him, hopefully, to do something like that. He was already went there and spent 1 year putting seismograph. And that's a big discovery here in Jack Oliver about subduction zone, and that those quakes, so-called Benioff zone now, we call them Wadati Benioff zone, really are within the plate, subducting plate based on attenuation. So I work on that project, but I start looking behind here. Some of you looking at those, there is a figure of that region there, and Lao Basin behind. So there's subduction, Samoa, Tonga, Kermadec, but behind it there's back arc basin that Dan Carrick may talk about if you invite him. Dan Carrick was in Scripps finishing his PhD. I didn't know him then. And I was in Lamont doing seismology. We discovered that figure that you see there, that there is very high attenuation zone behind the subduction zone. That was kind of crazy. You say, what's so anomalous behind the arc? Supposed to be where plate, subduct, interact, but it's there. Independently, Dan Carrick really made discovery based on marine geophysics data. There is extensional regime, and that was a major discovery. And what I mapped all the way to 300 kilometers deep fit perfectly what he mapped based on marine geophysics and ship time. So that was a major discovery there. And I went there to Tonga and Fiji also, and I worked there and got sick. Some of the figures you see here on the ship, I'm not good on ship. I get sick very badly. And I work on a project there also in Vanuatu, New Hebrides. And I stayed, they put me on an island alone for 5.5 weeks. It was Kitchi, a native, who the only one in the whole island speaks some English. So they put me there with him in his hut, and there's not much food. I brought with me some food. That's when I let my beard grow. And he ate most of it. I had like a dried apricot. You've never seen it. Gone. And other things like that. So in a few days, we have to live on the island, and he taught me how to use the machete to cut the coconut dime a dozen, and we and drink the milk. And then I taught him how to make rice using coconut milk. So that was a good recipe to do. And there's wild grapefruit. Nobody eats it, but it's a small island, active volcano, but there is like many villages, and every village speak their own language. They cannot understand each other, if all Polynesian, of course. And I went there and lived there and for 5.5 weeks, and then brought a lot of data, good data. The smoke, you see figure here, smoke, everything was smoke, big drum that George and others built, George Head, and we got a lot of interesting data. And we have at the same time OBS. That was the beginning of OBS, that the project started in Lamont, but then Morris Ewing moved to Austin, Texas. They moved that project there, OBS, and that was the first ever OBS really. The first one done offshore of California here, but it has a wire. But the ones we used in the Pacific was no wire. You drop it and you cross your finger. Sometimes you lose some of these. And that was a major project there. And Kitchi was an interesting guy, a Polynesian. I have at home. He made me a club. They kill pigs and so on, but using broken glass from bottles, and he would make it. Anyway, his grandfather ate a bishop. He was, the Australian are really bad news. Australian, unlike New Zealanders, New Zealanders really gentle people, were much better with the native. Australian would enslave them, the way this country was enslaving black from Africa. And they enslave them, and they go to the island, and they capture them, bring them down to Australia to have sugar cane. That was a big thing, sugar cane and sugar. Of course, the British, being sneaky, they brought Indian, half of Fiji is Indian, they brought them to work on the sugar. And that's why part of the political problem in Fiji. Most population, more Fijian, Indian than. But anyway, so the Australian came, so when the mercenary or missionary ship will come to the island, the islander, all they know is a white man. So they capture them and they cook them. Not for food, they cook them for ceremonial. And so his grandfather ate a bishop, or part of a bishop. So anyway, I worked there on Tonga, Fiji for a while. and then came back. We moved to Cornell. I finished my PhD in Lamont. Some of you always worry about PhD. I never ever thought of asking when I'm going to graduate. Actually, a fellow graduate student said, "Hey, Muawia, you have 5, 6 papers. What the heck, you should graduate." I said, "Okay." I went to Jack Oliver. I said, "What do you think?" He said, "Yeah, sure, yeah, you get PhD."
So, how many years were you in
Lamont? 4.5 years. Four and a half years, but we were working a lot, but we have activity. We have, so I put a photo here, me with kayaking in the rivers. We went to presidential ranges 1 week, hiking the whole presidential ranges, which is quite a hike, 70 pounds behind on your back, and did many things, but we work hard. I never went to Lamont on Saturday that all people there, student always on Saturday. Saturday is not a weekend, never, ever. Actually, we work at night also because we used to argue about who will use the microfiche machine, because all seismic data come on microfiche and you have only 4 or 5 machines. You have to fight who will access the microfiche. And then I stay at night late, then you have to go back. There is no buses across the George Washington Bridge after midnight. And so there's a bus will drop you at the beginning of the bridge and goodbye. Then I used to walk George Washington Bridge after midnight to go to the subway in Manhattan to take home. That really crazy to cross alone George Washington Bridge after midnight. But I did it. Then Jack actually came, the Cornell recruited him to come here, become chairman here. It's a long story by itself. He asked me to come as a researcher here, and that's where I moved to Cornell. And there was Brian Isaac, myself, really few old-timers, all of them died. Arthur Bloom was the last one to pass away last year. And 3 graduate students, really, that's it. But it built up in the COCO project and our project, and we have for many, many years, 60+ graduate students. In our department living in Kimball Hall, a very limited quarter, every 5 or 10 graduate students in one room. Before this building is built. I should stop here and make a general comment about research in the United States before I forget. I don't like it. I think there is a major need for rethinking the way research is supported in the United States. Europeans done better way in restructuring this idea. You write a proposal and you have to fund your postdoc, research staff, your graduate student, and if you're lucky, part of your salary 1 month in summer. It's impossibility now. And most reviewers, they don't like that. And hence the researcher really, like second-class citizen, including Cornell. They are Cornell, there are more than 1,000 research staff. You don't hear much about them. Always the president talk about the faculty, the student, and the staff. Nobody mentioned there are more than 1,000 researchers between postdoc, research associate, senior research associate at Cornell, and they are the backbone running this place. And honestly, I'm not minimizing the importance of the faculty, but you cannot run major research project and advancement without those researchers, period. And they are not treated well at Cornell. And I will not go into detail, but I'll be glad to discuss it with you and if you want me to. That's one issue I need. The other thing is the catastrophe of the way when the Supreme Court made it not possible for retirement, uncapping retirement age. People can stay until 80. I have few friend colleagues, they are 80 years old, still functioning faculty. That's nonsense. This uncapping retirement age and the tenure system is a recipe for catastrophe. We should change that. And I spoke in public many times. They hate me when I talk about there is a need for review after tenure, to review faculty after tenure in a graceful way, in a nice way, not to deny tenure, because they scream, oh, you are against tenure. I'm not against tenure, but I want to make sure they're doing their share. And many of them, they are not doing their share. Our department may be better than others, but it's a major problem for higher education in America. It had those two issues I discussed need to be addressed. And the student expectation have changed. You guys see life differently, and working hard is really important. Some of you, I know they work hard, but need to work hard. There's no alternative. You can beat dummy, but you can, you work hard, you will do it. But so you really, as I said, the place was full with many, many people, faculty and student, every Saturday, period. And so, but that's life. That change, you cannot change it. And I got involved throwing stone on police, I guess, in 1968 in Colombia. I didn't get arrested, but Nano Sieber got arrested. But he stayed for a few days and he left. He got fed up and he went to Italy having grapes, grape farmer instead. With Brian here, and we work on the major project, global subduction zone, global project really. Like, how the active volcano and how deep the plate. In those days were not well known. We work on that, was a major paper, Isaacs and Barazangi paper, global survey of all the air subduction zones. Also, I came up with this flat slab business. Some of you may read about South America. That my paper in 1976 to show there is a flat slab and lack of volcano. That was kind of odd. Nobody said, what the heck is that? But it's true. And Carnegie people argue with me, but they prove to be wrong, very badly wrong. Anyway, and so that flat slab. And then I work on Tibet, and I made alive the long-time idea of Argan, famous Frenchman, that India underthrust beneath Tibet. Everybody thought that that's crazy, how you put continent under continent. And we have seismology data to prove that this is correct. And that created, including our good friend Peter Morner argued with me endlessly. Now we know that India underthrust beneath Tibet, at least 50%, if not more, of Tibet is underlain by India itself. Then I changed to GIS in the Middle East and North Africa, and that's where George Haid worked with me. We have major project in Morocco, and we work in Egypt, we work in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, in Oman, in Kuwait, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Turkey, and we've done a lot of work. And I created major, we had many grant and contract, more than 10 at a given time. And I have 4 or 5 graduate students, I have 4 postdoc and research staff, really advanced researcher, not postdoc only. And so I have a group like 11, 12 people, all on soft money, all on soft money. And that was a nightmare because you don't easy to support that large number of people on soft money, but we did it, and you don't sleep much, but and we So we've done major work in the Middle East, and our research really and results are now standard. Nobody dare to work on the Middle East and Arabia in general without referring to our work. And we've done also all kinds of work like paleoseismology. We've done trenching in Lebanon and Syria and Turkey. We've done INSAR work. That was the beginning when Paco Gomez was here, and many other things. So we use gravity, magnetic, reflection, earthquake seismology, land satellite before, and then INSAR after, name it. We used it, and we have this research work. And then we developed GIS, Geographic Information System. That was the largest project, GIS, really in the United States, in academia. USGS didn't even do it. I have email from a well-known USGS person, I will not mention the name, saying, we wish we can do like that. So we have the idea supported by Defense Department and Department of Energy that to monitor nuclear explosion, part of that treaty that's signed by many countries, not ratified by the United States yet, which is sad, that you can go anywhere. You can ask, if you suspect Russia having nuclear explosion, you can go there within 3 days and go there and inspect, and vice versa. To that, you need a lot of data in your hand. So we developed incredible amount of data. Every geologic map of the United States, we put it there. Nobody had that except Cornell. You can go to see Minnesota or Montana, all the geologic map, all the mines, not only, we were focusing on United States and Middle East. Every copper mine, zinc mine, every salt mine, we have not only the data for all the mine, but we have the metadata, which is the data on the data. And we can make any cross-section of anywhere in the United States. I mean, it was a huge database. It's part of ArcInfo system. And we have big staff and was supported like $1 million a year. But they stopped funding it when gave all the data to colleague now. And they're trying to convince the State Department now to reactivate it. Because you can, in a click of a button, and used extensively in education. Because high schooler from Australia to India, they used to come and use it extensively because you can make geologic map, topography, physiography, you can look at, and we input. I have staff doing nothing but inputting the data to the system. That was major activity actually, GIS. I should stop here, I think, and see if you want to ask questions specific, I'll be glad to discuss any specific time or let's see what else I should say.
I have a stupid question for you. Yeah. When did you started hating geochemistry?
The phase diagram. I took a course in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and son of a gun, I passed it, but I hated it. I hated it. Geochemistry. It's a well-known Robert Finney, famous geochemist, was in Minnesota. Then, of course, every time Lamont, if I have a question about rocks, I go get Bob K. Bob K will answer all the questions. So I know a lot about it. I taught actually thin section mineralogy a long time ago, but not.
I have another question, even more ridiculous. That's a good question. Mine is, did you learn how to fish when you were in that island for 5.5 weeks?
Do I have what?
Did you learn how to fish?
To
Fishing?
Fishing. Oh, that's crazy. That's another story. The island, it's a coral reef around it. It's an active volcano. And I go there, of course, I change the record and I walk, thousands of fish around. And Kitchi, I convinced him to take me with his, they have a boat, two sides. So I went there, and Kitchi, look at that, the fish we eat. No, they love mackerel. The canned fish, that's what they eat. They love that. Why? Because, again, I have to give C- to the missionaries, because they go there. They don't want those darn islanders to go to the sea. Because the islanders, if you read history, they used to go from Tonga, Fiji Island to Tahiti, or possibly to Hawaii, thousands of miles, using small boat, learning from the movement of the waves, not the star, the movement of the waves. They will navigate thousands of miles. They don't want them to go there. They want to pray for the Lord and stay there. So they minimize their activity to go to the ocean. So I convinced him, and sure enough, he took one and he grabbed a fish, big one. And we tried, that's another story. He wants to cook it. I said, I built a fire. He wanted to put the whole darn fish. I said, no, cut it, clean it. He kind of laughed, but finally he did it, we ate it. And then a few days after, we convinced him, they throw, honestly, they got like 20 fish. They don't use it. We have chicken, they love chicken, and the chicken, they fly. We got chicken, I gave him money, I said, go and find chicken from the next village. The chicken came, and he put the chicken behind the box, beneath the box. And the poor chicken, and he left to the wood. And the nasty Australian, they come and used to cut, I forgot the name of the tree, special trees, very rare, and they will take it away to the Australia. And so I decided to feed the fish coconut. So I opened a little bit to give the fish coconut. Everybody eat coconut, the dog, the chicken, the human, and the chicken flew away. And I felt bad. The chicken came and said, fish, the chicken ran. I said, no problem. He knows where the village, the chicken went back. He brought it back. Then he wants to barbecue the chicken. So the way they do it, they take a feather and they insert the feather behind the brain here and they kill the chicken. I say, no, we Muslims, we have to cut the neck. And he said, what? He thought it's a joke. And I said, no, you have to cut. So he grabbed the chicken, boom. And then, of course, the poor chicken started. But anyway, we barbecue it. And no, they did not eat fresh fish a lot, unfortunately. And I ate a lot of coconut.
Do you hate coconut now?